Have you ever looked up at the moon and thought, wow, that's beautiful? Well, back in the 1950s, some people in the US government looked at it and thought, you know what would make that even better? A giant mushroom cloud. I'm not kidding. This is the incredible and slightly terrifying story of how the United States almost nuked the moon. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving into a declassified story that sounds like something straight out of a Cold War spy movie, but it was a very real plan. It was called A Study of Lunar Research Flights, or more dramatically, Project A119. So grab your tinfoil hats. Just kidding, you won't need them. This is all documented history. And let's get into it. The year is 1957. The Cold War is at its absolute peak. The air is thick with tension, paranoia, and the smell of rocket fuel. On October 4th, the Soviet Union launches Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth. It's a tiny, beeping metal sphere, but its impact was monumental. In the United States, it caused a nationwide panic known as the Sputnik crisis. Americans, who had always believed in their technological superiority, were suddenly looking up at the night sky, knowing a Soviet object was flying over their heads. It was a huge psychological blow. The U.S. military and government were scrambling. They needed to do something, and fast. They needed a spectacular display of power to prove that America was still top dog in the space race. Sending a satellite was one thing, but they needed something bigger, something bolder, something that the entire world could see with their own eyes. And what's the biggest billboard in the night sky? The moon. This is where Project A119 comes in. The idea was hatched at the Armor Research Foundation in Chicago, at the request of the U.S. Air Force. The proposal was simple, yet audacious. Launch a missile carrying a nuclear warhead and detonate it on the surface of the moon. Think about that for a second. Not a science experiment, but a celestial fireworks display, courtesy of an atomic bomb. The primary goal wasn't even scientific. It was pure, unadulterated PR. A power move. The planners calculated that if they timed the explosion just right, detonating it on the terminator, that line between the dark and light side of the moon, the resulting mushroom cloud would be backlit by the sun. People on Earth without telescopes would be able to see the flash. It would be a global spectacle, an undeniable demonstration of American might. The message to the Soviets would be crystal clear. We can reach the moon with a nuke. Don't mess with us. Now you might be thinking, who would they get to work on such a crazy project? Well, they assembled a team, and one of the young scientists brought on board to calculate the effects of the explosion was a graduate student named Carl Sagan. Yes, that Carl Sagan, the future beloved astronomer and host of Cosmos, who would later speak so eloquently about the pale blue dot and the need to protect our world, started his career helping to figure out how to nuke another one. In his later years, Sagan confirmed his involvement. His job was to model the expansion of the dust cloud in the low-gravity vacuum environment of the moon. He was also interested in the scientific possibilities. Could the explosion kick up lunar material that scientists could analyze from Earth? Could it reveal the presence of water ice, or even hint at microbial life hidden beneath the surface? Sagan was always a scientist at heart, trying to find knowledge even in a military project. But he also later expressed his relief that the plan never went ahead, calling it a colossal miscarriage of the scientific spirit. So why didn't it happen? Why aren't we looking up at a crater named Project A119 today? Well, as the plan progressed, some cooler heads started to prevail. The leaders in the Air Force began to have serious second thoughts. First, there was the risk of failure. What if the missile with its nuclear payload malfunctioned on launch? What if it blew up over a populated area, or failed to leave Earth's orbit, and came crashing back down somewhere, anywhere armed and dangerous? The potential for a catastrophic accident was enormous. The negative PR from that would be infinitely worse than the Sputnik crisis. Second, there were the scientists who were, understandably, horrified. They argued that nuking the moon would contaminate its pristine environment forever. The lunar surface is a unique time capsule. It has no atmosphere, no weather, so it has preserved a record of the solar system's history for billions of years. A nuclear detonation would scatter radioactive fallout all over it, ruining it for any future scientific study. It would be like spray painting graffiti all over the pyramids of Giza before archaeologists even had a chance to study them. And finally, as the space race evolved, the goal shifted. The focus moved from a quick, brutish show of force to a more sophisticated and inspiring objective: landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. President Kennedy's famous 1962 speech set this new goal. It was a challenge that required innovation, courage, and finesse, not just brute strength. Winning the space race by putting boots on the ground was seen as a much more powerful and positive statement than simply blowing a hole in our nearest celestial neighbor. So, Project A119 was quietly shelved in early 1959. The official report was destroyed, and the entire plan was kept secret for decades. It wasn't until the 1990s, when Sagan's biographer was researching his life, that the story began to emerge. Sagan had mentioned it in an academic application in 1959, and from that little breadcrumb, the whole wild story was pieced back together. It's a fascinating what-if in history. Imagine the world we'd live in if they had gone through with it. How would humanity's relationship with space exploration have changed? Would the moon be seen not as a symbol of wonder and exploration, but as a scar from our own Cold War folly? It's a sobering thought. It reminds us that even in the pursuit of progress and power, the line between ambition and recklessness can be incredibly thin. The story of Project A119 is a testament to the high-stakes paranoia of the Cold War, and a cautionary tale about the potential consequences of our actions. Thankfully, the dream of scientific discovery and human achievement won out over the impulse for a destructive display of power. Instead of a mushroom cloud, we got Neil Armstrong's one small step. And I think we can all agree, that was a much, much better outcome. What do you think? Was this a crazy idea or a necessary evil of the Cold War? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks so much for watching today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a forgotten piece of history, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories you won't believe are true. Until next time, keep looking up.